Welcome to Raising Trailmen. We just returned from a canoe trip full of scorching heat, bugs, and moments of growth. So today we're going to share about our planning, stories, and takeaways. We're also going to talk about our devotion for the week, which was Ecclesiastes. We're going to talk about gear tips, what worked, what didn't work, and other lessons learned. I'm Jeffrey Pitts, and this is Randy Hemingway, and we led our troops high adventure this year for Illinois 1320. And then Tim Bergener also joined us for a couple days and was a huge lift to everybody's spirits, and also brought stuff that we had forgotten or didn't know that we needed. So shout out to him. All right, Randy, do you want to walk us through kind of what the trip was?
Sure, yeah. So we, the trip was on the Current River. We were a group of 4 navigators, 6 adventurers, and us 2 leaders. And we left on Sunday morning, early Sunday morning, and drove down to Montauk State Park, and we spent a little bit of time in the park there, and then headed over to the Jadwin canoe rental, and they and there we picked up the canoes. They took us to Cedar Grove, which is where we put in on the Current. And so then we got our start there on that first day. It was a bit of a rough first day, but we'll talk about that more later. And spent the first night on like a sandbar, which we found out those are pretty hard to find. And then the next 3 nights we were in a couple different state parks. No, not state parks, the national park, the campgrounds. And then the final night we stayed right across from Bee Bluff, and then we got taken out at the end on Friday, and so we covered about 50 miles around there, and over the course of those 6 days, and so each of the Current River is fed by springs all down. So there's all sorts of really cool things to see. The springs are really cold, and so that keeps the river itself nice and cool, and which came in handy with the heat that we were dealing with. And then there's caves and things to see along the way. And I think so if we boiled the trip down to one word or phrase, I think my word was eye-opening, just because this was something I'd never done before, much less the boys had never done it before. Most of them, I don't know if all of them. And but I think, Jeff, what was your one word for the trip?
So when I picked one word, my word was hot, because at least 2 of the days the high was 97, and we'll talk a little bit about how we prepared for that. But even being really well prepared for it, you still had to live through it, and I think your body goes through a little bit of getting out of the air conditioning and like the shock of not having somewhere to go and cool down. So definitely it was hot, and those springs were just like hugely refreshing anytime we could get into them. So yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the packing process, what worked, what didn't work. We do hike a lot, so we have at least 2, our troop has at least 2 hike-ins every year, if not more. And so we have a pretty mature list. We also have a lot of equipment that we've invested in. So that gear list, which is up on our website, is pretty standard, and everybody kind of knows what to bring. This time around, we did have a lot more hammock campers. That seems to be kind of taking off with our adventures. And so we had 4 trailmen who had hammocks with them. And so that was kind of a big change, and brought some new issues to the camp out. We also took less bedding. Like I had one sheet, and that's all I had besides my mat, and so that made things a little bit lighter. And then dry bags were very important to us. I know, Randy, you said that you were really focused on your dry bags.
Yep.
And which made a difference. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just being on the river, one thing I think we didn't realize was just how wet we were going to be and how impossible in the hot, humid summer it was. Things just didn't dry out.
Yep. Yep.
2 years ago, I was on a trip to the Boundary Waters, and one thing that we did then and we did this time was we did carry a lot more stuff that we would never take on a hike in. So we had one trailman that brought a Dutch oven. I had a skillet. We had like full-size coolers that we put in the canoes. So that was nice to be able to have that and be able to take more things with us. Yeah, and then Randy, you had some good points that I had forgotten about the boys kind of not packing their own stuff and the issues that brought to the trip.
Right. Yeah. So the boys didn't necessarily know everything that they had. They didn't know where it was in their packs, and so not all the boys, but just a few of them.
Especially the newer
ones. Yeah. And but I think everybody had kind of packed a bag at some point, and so that was good. That there was none of the boys showed up with like a couple grocery bags just full of loose stuff. Everybody had a backpack and kept their stuff pretty contained, which helped a lot.
Yeah. And then fishing poles created a little bit of issues in terms of snagging stuff. That seemed to be kind of a constant thing.
It seemed like one boy in particular, his gear got really torn up just because it kept getting snagged on lures.
Yep. We did do a lot of group prep, and we always do group prep before we go on campouts. So especially planning meals, the trailmen did a really good job of being a part of that. Especially, I don't think we had any navigators plan meals, and they're used to planning meals either individually or as a small patrol. But we did it as a whole group, so all 12 or 13 people ate the same thing every time. And besides like lunches and snacks, those were all kind of on your own. But some of the meals that we had were like pork steaks and mashed potatoes, instant potatoes, donuts were a big one. And so they did a really good job of bringing that stuff, and with not a lot of oversight. Like they said, here's the meal that we're going to bring, and they brought all the things that they needed to. And
that was great. They actually brought all the stuff, because that's been a bit of a struggle with some of our hike-ins. Is the boys might bring the main ingredient for the main meal, but they don't bring some of the side things that go along with it. And so yeah, they did a really good job on this trip.
Yeah. So we didn't have any like just glaring gaps of gear that we didn't have while we were there.
Right.
One of the things that I was very focused on before we left was sun protection, because I knew how hot it was going to be. There was like literally no rain for the entire week that we were out there, and there's no clouds, so it was just sun constantly. So we really made sure that all the boys had hats, long pants. I know when I've been on like single day camp canoes, your shorts tend to kind of maybe ride up a little bit, and you get nice sunburn on top of your legs where they're not used to getting sun. Mm-hmm. And we didn't want that to happen on Sunday and then have to like suffer the rest of the week through that. So we did a good job of long sleeves, long pants. I know I had a weird like tan line in between my water shoes and my pants.
Yeah.
Anywhere the sun could get, it burned. So hats were a big thing, especially hats that covered ears. Ears were kind of a little bit burned after the first day or two, and so after that they changed up their configuration to address that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had said that you were really focused on dry bags.
Yeah. I just went into it with the thought that any of my stuff could go into the river at any time. So I didn't know how intense the current was going to be or anything like that. So we had found some pretty nice dry bags by Alps Mountaineering on sale at REI, I think it was, and those came in really handy. I kept my clothes, tent, a pair of shoes in there, so those were really important.
Yeah, something I know we didn't put on here, but that just reminded me of the first night we had people that were wet. All their stuff was wet.
Yep. And
you were handing out dry stuff. So it helped out not just you, but a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, Randy, do you have any kind of standout moments from the trip?
I think there was some of the kind of good moments we ran into was one of the younger guys. He was just doing his best. Like he was just had such a great attitude the whole time. And at one point I think he was talking to you, and he said, you know, he knew he was not maybe the top canoe navigator, you know, and so but he said he's just out there to really encourage the other guys to keep going and you know, to stick with it and see this through. And that was just really a cool comment to hear from him. And then we had a couple of the older guys, I think our two senior members, adventurers, they each really stepped up and took ownership of helping the younger guys through some sticky situations on the river. For the first few days, they were in their own canoe, and they would kind of pull up. They would bring up the rear and pull up beside some of the younger guys that were having issues and help them through it. And then towards the end of the trip, they actually ended up splitting up into the canoes with the younger guys to help them. And that was a really good thing to see.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was concerned with before we split the two adventurers up and we put them in the back of the canoes of the two navigators. And I was concerned that they would kind of feel put on of like hey, we're making you kind of babysit these guys. Mm-hmm. But they took it in stride, and they were really good. I even heard some of the other younger adventurers or navigators talking about the advice that they were giving. So they had heard them in the canoe, like giving advice on paddling and stuff, and they were other people were taking that advice. So they really were like mentoring through that process and had a good attitude about the whole thing. Yep. I was very happy about that.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and we also had some funny times. You know, you don't spend a week with these guys and not come away with a few funny stories. At one point, it was at our first campsite. Everybody was packing up. All the boys were in the canoes, and I think Jeff and I were kind of taking a last check, and the one end of the sandbar was
a little smelly,
pretty rank, and so
you could smell it.
and somebody had used the restroom on the far end of the sandbar and left a bit of a mess for us to clean up. It was we had to go over, dig the hole, slide everything into it, make sure it was all taken care of, and then one thing that I appreciate that I thought of doing is that we just took a picture together. I was like, this is going to be the best picture because nobody's going to know what we were doing while we were taking this picture. But it was pretty funny after the fact. Yeah. Yeah. And then farther down the river, one of the boys had caught a little fish, and they were trying to use it as bait for a larger fish, and that thing ended up dying in the process. And then one of the other boys, he's really enthusiastic about fishing, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna keep this as bait for, we were getting ready to keep moving, and he says, I'm gonna keep it for bait for later. And we're trying to convince him, you cannot keep this thing. He says, I'll keep it in my hat. Jeff says, the hat needs to be on your head. And he says, okay, I'll keep it in my hat on my head. And I said, look, the hat's got to be on your head, but the fish cannot be inside the hat on your head.
We gotta live with you, buddy.
Yeah, and
it's gonna stink.
He just looks at me and goes, oh. That was a pretty funny one. And then I think another encouraging time that we had was, right there at the end, everybody's come through a week of canoeing, and that last day was not particularly difficult as far as navigating the river went. But out of the blue, we're going down a wide open stretch of river, and two of the boys, they just end up high-centered on a tree in the middle of the river. It was
like teeter-tottering on top of it.
Yeah, it was at least 10 feet deep there. And I was bringing up the rear at that point, and I came up behind them and kind of worked my way over to them, and they were just as calm as could be. I think if that had happened the first day, they would have been a wreck. But they were just as calm as could be. They've been through a week of these types of situations. You just stay calm, you work your way through it, and that's exactly what we did. We tried a few different things, nothing was working, and I ended up having to pull a pack from their canoe over to my canoe, which is not a fun thing to do in the middle of the river. But they stayed calm and everything worked out, and we made our way down the river from there. But I was just really impressed at how seeing that growth just in how they handled a difficult situation.
Yeah,
so that was pretty neat. So then just kind of a something I took away from the trip or noticed during the trip. I took a journal, and each day I tried, at the end of my journal entry, I wrote, "Thank you, Lord, for something that happened that day that I could be thankful for." And because there was at least 2 days where I struggled a little bit to find something, but I did. And but looking back on the trip, man, just the way the Lord provided for us. We had campsites to stay at each night, and every one of the campsites had what we needed. The first night, some of the hammock campers, they weren't able to string up in the trees, but they were able to lay out tarps on the sand and sleep on the sand. And then we had like official campsites at campgrounds the next 3 nights, and then that spot across from Bee Bluff was just beautiful. Perfect.
It definitely seemed like things improved every day.
Yeah. And so there was that, and then Tim showing up a couple days into it. His enthusiasm really lifted everyone's spirits, and he also brought food, and that lifted everyone's spirits too. And then there was, towards on the tail end of the trip, just the way the Lord provided. The pickup bus was there earlier than we expected it to be. The church bus almost ran out of gas, and then then there was a gas station right there that we could stop at.
Literally, like, I opened up the gas and I don't know if the wind was going in or out, but it just like gasped like it was like on its last fumes. Yeah, it was a little sketchy there, but and then the Lord provided just the perfect weather for this kind of a trip. Like, we didn't have any storms or rain to speak of, and it was just sunshiny and beautiful the whole time. It was hot, but we were on a river. We could cool off. So it was, looking back, just seeing the Lord's provision through it all was really neat. Yeah. All right, I'm just going to cover every time we go on a camp out or if we do an event, we do what we call roses and thorns. Part of that is we want to get better. We want to figure out what we should change. So thorn is not just like a complaint, like the sun was out, like, okay, we can't do anything about that. but like what are things we can improve. And then roses are like things that we would really like to do again, or things that we really appreciated. And we have a huge list of these that we did on our last evening there. So I'll just touch on the high points. In terms of thorns, the first day we had several capsites. I know I got knocked out of my boat real quick. People were there to grab stuff, and we had 2 other canoes on that first day that really hit like a big log in the river, and we had gear all over the place. So capsizing or shallow rapids where we had to like get out and pull boats, that was one of their thorns. But we'll talk a little bit about this later. Like, we definitely got better at dealing with those things. And also I think part of it was just being aware of it, learning to read the current, and so that definitely improved. Keeping things dry, we've talked a lot about. That was a thorn. I think next time people are gonna understand, like, you can't just throw it in a Walmart bag and expect it to stay dry.
Yep.
Flies were a big deal, and I would have thought like mosquitoes or something, but flies, big horse flies, were a big deal. So that was one of our thorns. A lot of the places we went, we couldn't hammock camp, and that was a very big lesson learned for a lot of the boys. Is have some type of a backup from a hammock perspective. So that was one of their thorns. Making sure that we have more hydration was something that we talked about. That was something we had to kind of supplement along the way. In terms of roses, caves by far were like the biggest thing that people loved.
Yeah.
And there's a place on the Current River called Cave Spring, which you can swim into, you can jump off the side into. It was phenomenal. The boys loved it. The water is 56 degrees. It felt like you were in like a fridge, which felt really nice.
Yeah.
On those days. They really liked floating or like swimming down the rapids. And so we were very purposeful when we planned the trip to not be pushing from a distance perspective, but to like give them time to spend time in the water and float on the river. So they really enjoyed that. With the hammocks not working, Tim had brought out some tents, which was a huge blessing for those boys, and they really used them. They appreciated them a lot. That was a rose. Sun protection was really good for them. They really love the meals. If anything, I think we would step back the meals a little bit and looking for things that take a little bit less prep time, because some of them were like, I mean, we cooked at least like a dozen pork steaks in a skillet, so you're sitting there for a couple hours, feeding people as they come through the line.
Yeah.
But they definitely appreciated that food after a long day.
Yep.
Being able to supply along the route was a big deal. Being able to get drinks and stuff like that. We went through several water shoes, which just tended to fall apart with how much we were walking around and stuff. So those were kind of our roses and thorns. From a devotion perspective, we planned on going through Ecclesiastes. So we were there for 6 days, and Ecclesiastes has 12 chapters, so we just did 2 chapters a day. I had sat down and picked out memory verses, not kind of knowing what was going to happen during the day or during the week, and so these were picked out ahead of time, and so I'm just going to go through those real quickly. Each of these verses comes from the 2 chapters of the day. So like on day 1 we did chapters 1 and 2, and then day 2 was 3 and 4, and so forth. And the boys did a really good job of trying to memorize the verses, and we would try to cover them in the morning, and then we'd cover them later. Some of them they internalized a lot more, and some of them they like even had like rhymes, like they would just like chant them during the day.
Yep.
But Ecclesiastes 1:4 says, "A generation comes and a generation goes, but the earth remains the same through the ages." And we were just trying to help them to get some perspective on life. There lots of boys have come before them, and hopefully lots more after them. Just get kind of perspective on life and just how quick it goes by. On the second day, we talked about chapter 3, verse 1 was, "For everything there is an appointed time and an appropriate time for every activity on earth." We cover, in that it has a list of, like, there's a time to die, there's a time to for war, there's a time for peace. So there's all these different parodies of different things. One of the boys was coming back to a funeral, and so it was very real to us to think about life and how fleeting it was. On the third day, it was Ecclesiastes 6:10, says, "Whatever has happened was foreordained, and whatever happens to a person was also foreknown. It is useless for him to argue with God about his fate, because God is more powerful than he is." And by the third day, everybody is hot, tired. The third day was our rest day, which was a really good thing to have. And I mean, we just, like, they were bored, but like not bored enough to go do anything. And so, things maybe didn't go how they had initially thought at the beginning of the week. And so it was kind of like, all right, you don't have control over this. Like, just step back and appreciate what you have. And a lot of boys, as we were talking to them throughout the week, like, they really thought about that, about how important just living in the present and appreciating what you have is. And then on the fourth day, we had 7:2, which is, "It is better to go to a funeral than a feast, for death is the destiny of every person, and the living should take this to heart." So again, just kind of staying on that theme of how valuable life is and how fleeting it is. Then 9:10 says, "Whatever you find to do with your hands, do it with all your might." And that one, they would just like chant, "Whatever you find to do with your hands, do it with all your might," and just the whole day. And I think they were like kind of getting into the swing of things and enjoying the work a lot more by then.
Yep.
And then the last day, it was, "Fear God and keep his commands, because this is the whole duty of man." So that just kind of that hardship and reading through Ecclesiastes and kind of knowing that life's hard, it's short, but there's purpose in it, and we should do what we do, with all of our might. It really sunk in. It turned out to be like the best book I think we could have had.
Yeah. So let's spend the next couple minutes talking about some of the gear we took with us, some of the gear we like to have with us all the time, and maybe some of the gear we wish we had. So my kind of top 3 things that I take on every camp out. I have a pillow made by the brand Nemo. They call it a Philo because it's an inflatable pillow, but then it also has a layer of foam on top of it, and the cover is kind of like a nice soft pillowcase material. And it having that foam layer, I sleep on my side, and inflatable pillows just smash my ears, and I wake up with my ear killing. And so so having that foam on there makes it more comfortable for me, and so I really enjoy that. And then having a camp chair, which I'm sitting in right now, they pack down pretty small. They're fairly light, light enough. I bring them on backpacking trips. I tried sitting on logs and rocks and things, and it's just really nice at the end of a long day.
It is probably the nicest thing to have on a hike or a canoe trip. Like, just being able to sit down and rest is a big deal.
Yeah.
And if you're not in if you're not in your seat, somebody else is going to be in your seat.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Anytime you walk up, because not everybody has chairs, especially the younger guys are like, I don't need a chair. I had some boys that we had chairs they could have brought, and I told them about them, and they're like, I don't think so. And then as soon as we're on the trip, they're like, I wish I would have brought a chair.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's definitely a good investment, and you can get them for really cheap.
Aldi has them every year for like 15 to 20 or something, almost nothing.
Yeah. So highly recommend that. And another thing I enjoy bringing with me is having a light that I can hang up inside my tent. Most tents have some sort of a loop or something on the inside that you can hang stuff from. And we've got these cheapo Amazon light things. They look like a light bulb, but they've got a little carabiner on the end of it, so I can clip it up there. So then once I'm in my tent and I've got it all zipped up and I don't have to worry about bugs, I hook that up there, turn the light on, and then I can kind of get settled for bed with the light on.
Mm-hmm.
I was writing in my journal a little bit by that light, and I don't have to worry about bugs getting all up in my face while I'm doing that. So having a light inside the tent is really valuable to me. I don't know, did you have any gear that you like to keep with you?
I agree with the pillow thing. I have to have some type of pillow, and since I didn't have, I just had a sheet, like I splurged and I brought like an actual real pillow. Like that was probably the majority of my backpack was just a pillow. Kind of the lessons learned about gear was the hammocks was probably the biggest thing.
Right. Yeah. The boys came with the idea that they were hammocking no matter what.
Yeah.
They're gonna find a spot to hammock, and we having never been on the current river, we didn't understand the landscape, and so it's just so dense along the riverbank. You can't penetrate in there. There's trees all over the place, but there's all sorts of shrubs, bushes and stuff underneath
like
it.
Maybe if you had like a machete and like you spent time like clearing your way, but even so, like it seemed like it was either brush or like really big trees.
Yeah.
Not a bunch of small trees where you can put something on.
Right. So relying solely on the hammocks was a learning experience, and then I learned, and I know several others learned, like when you get off the river, get the wet stuff off fast, especially shoes. I had my river shoes on during the day, but the first couple of days I didn't take them off right away, and my feet suffered because of that. So towards the kind of after the midway point of the trip, I started drying my feet off and getting them into socks and hiking shoes. Like as soon as we got off the river, that made a big difference. So then for food, as far as packing food goes, I think a couple of the more popular meals were pork steaks, like you mentioned, and then Tim brought biscuits and gravy, and those worked out really well.
Yeah, we like literally every ounce of gravy that was in that pot got eaten. It disappeared.
Yeah, it was great. And then that first day we had a capsize boat, and our spaghetti ended up in the river. like boxes of spaghetti. Right. Yeah. So the box of spaghetti ended up in there, and then the end of the second night we were supposed to eat that spaghetti, and it was just
it was like a hard block of moldy or river smelling wheat, I guess.
Yeah, the boys carried it over to the dumpster at arm's length. It smelled so bad they were yelling about it.
We did not eat spaghetti that week.
Right. So and then I know you had All Trails. You had downloaded some of the trails and things. And
I literally like zoomed in on where I knew we were going to be, and I just every single thing I could find I downloaded, so I'd have all the data. And I didn't realize until we were on the trail or in the canoes and we had zero service that you can literally in All Trails like select and download a whole area. And so it does that for you. I thought that was really cool. I'm definitely going to use that.
Yeah. Yep. So I think a few things we would do differently. When you're on the river, you gotta be careful about trees sticking into the river and root balls, and you gotta be careful not to let the current push you anywhere near those things. And so that was one of the things we learned, as you get on the river, it's like you've got to watch out for those things from the first second you get in.
Yeah, you could see them ahead of time, but it's too late. Like you're already getting sucked in.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and they can be very dangerous. So, and then after the first day, we started spending a bit more time on breaks during the day, letting the boys, swim and fish and stuff. We would just take half an hour to 45 minutes and just chill out.
Especially when it got hot, like at lunchtime, we would just not be pushing. We would be in the water for like an hour.
Yep. Find a shady spot to pull your canoes up in and take out your camp chairs, relax. The boys are in the water. Usually they like to kind of hike upstream a little bit and then float, let the current carry them down. And they had a good time with that. And then, like you mentioned earlier, the sun protection, having your ears covered and your neck covered can make a big difference. And then I think this was the first time doing this, so we learned to get some drinks. So we ended up stopping at some of the stores that are along the way, and just every boy just went in and grabbed a Powerade, and a nice cold Powerade from the fridge.
Yeah.
And that helped a lot to lift spirits and got some electrolytes in their system and stuff. So I think if we did anything differently, it would be pack some of that stuff ahead of time.
Yeah, and we made sure that the boys had like hydration packs. Like we were really emphasizing that, but we only had them like pack one for a day, and like at least 3 a day. And some of those can get expensive, but I mean, so are Gatorades when you buy them from camp stores out of a fridge. So it would have been cheaper for us to just like really go overboard on hydration.
Right. Well, and especially we're in canoes. You have to get the stuff to the canoes, yes, but you're not carrying the stuff all day. It's just riding along with you in the canoe. So
Tim brought in some big packs of Gatorade, and we just like once they're distributed, it's not that big of a deal.
Right. And then walkie-talkies. We had a couple of walkie-talkies. I think one ended up in the water.
They worked really well until that happened.
Yeah. One ended up in the water, and then some of the communication we struggled with the communication a little bit. Jeff was leading in the front, kind of keeping an eye out for hazards, and then he would call back, and the message would eventually maybe find its way back to me.
It was like playing telephone.
Right, yeah.
I'd be like, tree on the right, and then somebody would be like, stay on the right.
Yeah. And so it was, some of the communication was a little tricky there. So having walkie-talkies would help with that. I think if we had any advice to give trail life leaders or dads planning a similar trip, it would maybe have a canoe skills day on still water, where the boys get used to the different strokes, the J stroke, and they can practice some of those skills. Getting in and out of the canoe is tricky, and so having some practice doing that would be good. And then we ran into a Boy Scout troop along the way, and just in talking with them, he had done that same trip several times, and said, hey, it's better to use the plastic canoes than the aluminum ones, which we were using, because the V shape on the bottom of the aluminum canoe makes it more tippy.
It has like an actual seam along the middle of it. And so if you get sliding sideways and you hit a rock, it just grabs it and it wants to tip you over.
And he said the plastic canoes just kind of form to whatever obstruction is under the water and just kind of ride over it. So that might be something to watch out for. And then I think, so looking back on the trip, after that first day, it was, we went through that first day, it was pretty rough. Had spent the first night on the sandbar, and then that next morning we got up, and the Lord brought to mind Romans 5:3-5, And so I just encourage the boys that, look, we are going through a difficult time, a tribulation, if you will. And Romans 5 says we glory in tribulations, and because they exercise patience, and then patience brings about experience, and experience brings about hope. And so I said, right now you've just got to be thankful for the situation we're in and have patience through it. We just got to push through and have that patience, and then we're going to build experience over the next few days, and then hopefully we'll have hope that we can come back out here and do this again sometime. And sure enough, by the end of the week, I think spirits were pretty high. Yeah. And I reminded them that, look, we had patience through those difficult first couple of days. We built the experience, and now I think we've all got hope that we could come back out here and have an enjoyable time on the river without maybe having to go through some of those really difficult learning times again. So
yeah, I definitely tell the boys pretty regularly that, like, all the coolest places that you can go to, like, they take a lot of effort to get there. And that's why it's not like we're just out here, making our lives miserable for no reason. And so, like, if we hadn't gone through those first sets of days, like, we wouldn't have gotten to the end at Bee Bluff, which was just, like, gorgeous. We all slept well. It was beautiful. We were able to swim and do really cool stuff. So yeah, when you're newer on big trips, you don't realize, you're just like dwelling on the fact that it's like, I'm miserable right now.
Yep.
And like, you can tell the older guys are like, yeah, like, I'm not gonna say that I'm not miserable, but like, there's a purpose to it.
Yep.
And yeah, 100%. So just kind of wrapping up, I really appreciated from Ecclesiastes thinking about being in the present, and so for that trip, I appreciated being there with my boys, and just kind of the time I got to spend with each of them individually. So just to kind of wrap it up, with Ecclesiastes, we really emphasized enjoying the present. I even quoted some Kung Fu Panda while we were on the trip, but it helped me just remember, how fleeting the time is to spend with your sons, and so I just really appreciated having that week to spend with them and take some time to kind of talk with them along the river.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I think the trip kind of highlighted to me, as my son gets older, he's going to have to go through the rapids of life, if you will, some of those rough times in life, and he's going to have to go through those himself. I can't do that for him, but I can be there with him and kind of point out some of the hazards and hey, watch out for this, watch out for that. You're doing a good job here, those types of things. We can be alongside him, helping him through those things. So that's kind of an encouraging thought that I came away with.
Yeah, we talked a lot about, like at the beginning, it felt like we would have a couple of people kind of sprint ahead, and then they literally just stop on the side of the river and get out and just wait for everybody to come down to them. And at the very beginning, like, we had to have a talk of like, listen, we got to be inside of communication. And by the end of the week, we defined that a lot better. And it was, we want you close enough that you can hear us, but far enough that you can avoid mistakes that we make. And it's just like a beautiful picture of Christian mentorship, of be looking for people that are maybe a couple of years ahead of you and have gone through this, and talk to them about it. Don't, if somebody, I know that I ended up on top of a log, and I was right up behind somebody else in the canoe, and so they missed it and didn't communicate to me that there was an obstruction, and I didn't have time to react. And so it was like, not only pick people that are out there in front of you, but also communicate with them and ask them, like, hey, what'd you do in this case? And so just a good picture of life. I was looking at Titus 2, 6 and 7. It says, encourage younger men likewise to be self-controlled, showing yourself to be an example of good works in every way. And so as we were going down the river, you know, we were showing each other kind of how to navigate the river. And you know, I just thought that was a really good picture of life. So I appreciate you if you've made it this far listening to us. We do have a website, raisingtrailmen.com. There's a way there that you can submit if you have stories or roses and thorns. I'd really like to build up a good kind of library of places to go around the U.S. for trailmen, what were lessons learned. And so any way that you can kind of help us build that, I'd appreciate it. Walk worthy.